Grace and peace to you. Hear this story from John 3, verses 1 to 17, about Nicodemus, the night visitor. Nicodemus had always been a confident man, sure of God, sure of his faith, sure of himself, and sure of the answers. After all, wasn't he a great teacher? But now he was confused, unsure of God, unsure of his faith, and unsure of himself. And he wasn't even sure of the questions, let alone the answers. It had all started when he met Jesus, a young man from Nazareth. Jesus had caused a bit of a stir in the temple, a scene really, upsetting the tables of the money changers and upsetting the religious leaders. The ordinary people seemed to hang on to his words, listening to his teaching and believing that he was someone special because of the way he helped and healed people. Nicodemus hung around at the back, listening, first out of curiosity, then out of real interest, and now in confusion. So Nicodemus decided to visit Jesus and find out more. He waited until it was night, for when else was there time and quiet to engage in good conversation. That way, fewer people would see him, too. As he knocked on the door, Nicodemus wasn't quite sure of what questions he was going to ask. So when he actually sat down with Jesus, he thought of a statement instead. "Teacher, we know you must be from God. No one could do the wonderful things you do unless God was with them." Jesus smiled. "I tell you honestly, no one can see God at work without being born from above." Nicodemus was still confused. Maybe it was time for a question. "I'm becoming old. How could I possibly be born a second time?" "Really," replied Jesus, "to be part of God's realm, you need to be born of the Spirit as well as flesh. It's a bit like the wind blowing here and there. You don't know where it comes from or where it is going, but you hear it and see it all right. The realm of God is like that. You can't see where it starts or where it will end, but you can know you are part of it." "How can it be?" Nicodemus puzzled. Jesus responded with a twinkle in his eye. "Is this one of Israel's great teachers without an answer to these questions? Truly, I tell you, I can only tell you what I have known and seen. You teachers find it so hard to accept. What if I tried to tell you about the God's life beyond? Only the Son of Man has been there. That's where he has come from, and that's where he is going. Our stories of faith are models for life, encouraging you to trust in the Son of Man. Do you know how much God loves you and the world and the people in it? So very, very much. So much as to give what is most precious, to share the very God life with those who have faith. God didn't send the Son of Man to put people down, but to give them life and wholeness. God is right in front of you. Have faith." Well, Nicodemus felt overwhelmed as he listened to Jesus. He couldn't think of a question or an answer, but his heart was filled with a surge of hope and peace, trust and wonder. He realized how little he knew about God and how much he wanted to know. He felt like a beginner, as if he was starting all over again. Then everything seemed to click into place. Was this what Jesus meant by being born anew? Here ends the reading of our word. May God add a blessing to this holy text. And would you be with me in the spirit of prayer? Sweet Jesus, May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. In the dark of night, Pharisee and teacher Nicodemus poses the question, how is this possible? And his curiosity elicits Jesus' most famous response. Despite its misuse and bumper sticker applications, for God so loved the world is how all things are possible. We've all had moments in life when we would rather deny that the impossible is possible than to learn new ways of doing things or risk the possibility of some new experience in life. Yet every day, we are doing impossible things. So tell me, what impossible things have you done so far just today? None? Really? Did you perfectly poach your breakfast egg in 45 seconds in the microwave? Did you check email and see messages arriving from all over the US and the globe, from friends, business associates, maybe even your grandchild? Did you bounce out of bed and stroll pain-free around your home using an artificial hip or knee? Did you stop at an ATM or go online to your bank's app to deposit a check or pay a few bills or get some cash? Better yet, forget the cash and the credit card swipe. Did you pay your tab at Whole Foods with a quick connect through Apple or Android Pay? Or maybe on your way to church, you ran through the drive-thru for a breakfast burrito with extra hot sauce in a $30,000 plus car that self-regulates its heat, air conditioning, and anti-lock brakes, using built-in intelligence that's wired into hundreds of microchips, listening to the exact piece of music you want from a streaming music service acquired via your phone's 5G cell service and pumped through the car's speakers through a magical Bluetooth connection, guided by a built-in satellite GPS system that knows exactly where you are and what the best route is for you to take to get where you're going, while it optimizes time, the scenery, and tolls, and can show you where to stop for a cup of coffee at Starbucks on the way. All of these things, and a million more, would have been rejected as impossible only a decade or two ago. Today, electronic gadgetry that is accessible to all, or at least those who have the financial security of our kind of privilege, microchip technology, medical, surgical, pharmaceutical wizardry, and a culture of 24/7, 365 services has made much of what seemed previously impossible a part of our common everyday experience. Certainly, most of these technologies are old news and mainstream now, but as they were being introduced, we all knew people who would rather deny the impossible is now possible than to learn new ways of doing things or to risk the possibility of new experiences in their life. Remember the fears and the resistance to microwaves. There were grandmothers who would rather cook in the same old scarred and seared saucepan they'd been using for years than to try the convenience offered by the microwave. And maybe you've had some fear about, or you know someone who would rather hobble around on a painfully arthritic knee or hip rather than allow some strange new cyborgian joint into their body. Some people still refuse to believe that anything other than snail mail is a legitimate or trustworthy form of communication. And the social norms as regards everything from how we share and learn both good and bad news with each other, read Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, to sending thank you notes and wedding invites, to signing legal documents, to how people engage in job searches and business meetings is shifting seismically. And in all of these things, what had been impossible has become possible almost overnight. I got a beautiful invitation in the mail recently. It was on amazing to touch cardstock paper with raised, colored, shiny ink text. And because I hadn't previously been aware of the event or received any online communication about it, I actually wondered if they really meant for me to be at the engagement, or if I had just been on some old, outdated mailing list. This morning, my water stopped running shortly after I had lathered up in the shower, and after a few choice curse words, a sufficient toweling dry, and a trip to the basement to see if there was some sort of explosion of piping in the house, I figured it must be something outside of us, and so I went to Facebook to figure out what happened. We can literally reach thousands of job seekers for very little investment and meet with hundreds of people at the same time without leaving our living rooms. And still, we shake our head thinking, is this right? Is this a real invitation? Is this news posting the truth? Is this online resume really how you want to apply for this job? Can we get our work done well on Zoom or Slack or Skype? How is this possible? Is this really possible? Well, in today's gospel, Nicodemus seems to be one of those folk so resistant to change that they keep claiming that new possibilities are impossible. Nicodemus is so flummoxed by the unexpected nature of Jesus' images and the possibilities of his promises that all he can do is stupidly stammer, "How is this possible? How is this possible? How is it possible for us to be born from above after our first physical birthday is long past? How is it possible for us to see and enter the kingdom of God? How is it possible for broken, sinful people who have turned from God to ascend to heaven? How is it possible that mortal creatures such as ourselves may gain eternal life?" Well, my beloved, you may not believe this is in your intellect, but you know this in your soul. The answer to the question, how is it possible, is that we've got an impossible God. That is to say, a God who defies what is possible, who transforms a no way Jose unbelief into an obedient faith. A God who takes a no way and turns it into way because of the way. A God who makes a way when there is no way. Our impossible, too good to be true, never gives up on us. God with us, Emmanuel, outlines the core of this reality in this memorable verse from today's text. For God so loved the world that God gave the Son, the only Son, so that everyone who believes in him may not perish, but may have eternal life. Yes, John 3:16. Indeed, all things are now possible because God so loved the world and gave us God's only Son. Indeed, Jesus is proof of God's commitment to doing the impossible. J.B. Phillips argues in his classic, Your God is Too Small, that we can never have too big a conception of God. And the more scientific knowledge in whatever field advances, the greater becomes our idea of his vast and complicated wisdom. Yet unless we are to remain befogged and bewildered and give up all hope of ever knowing God as a person, we have to accept his own planned focusing of himself in a human being, Jesus Christ. If we accept this fact as the fact of history, it becomes possible to find a satisfactory and comprehensive answer to a great many problems, and what is equally important, a reasonable shelf on which the unsolved perplexities may be left with every confidence. Now, that's a little heady, but I think what Phillips is saying is that if we can accept that God came to us in Christ, we can trust that God can pretty much manage anything and everything, and that if we can put the unmanageable, impossible stuff of our lives on the God shelf, or as my beloved friends in AA would say, in the God box, into God's hands, then we can manage anything and everything. We can manage because God's got it. The shorthand for this is let go and let God. Well, there's a story from the Journal of American Medical Association called A Doctor in the House, written by Bernadine Paulshock, an MD, that illustrates how Jesus makes the impossible possible. And it seems apropos to this moment wherein we are worrying about how to manage if people, maybe most people, get sick from the virus. A physician went to visit and treat a sick mother whose children had chicken pox. She gave advice to the mother and left. The pediatrician came later to see the children. The next day, when the first physician called, the mother said to her, "Dr. M did something really great for us." After he left, he went over to the supermarket and brought back milk and juice and barbecue chicken and bananas. I was so surprised. He didn't even let me pay him. He really is one terrific doctor. The author of the story opined, that is how we heal, in those small acts between one human being and another. Another woman in that story shared an experience she had with her oncologist, describing how for her a simple act had enormous power. He once tied my shoes after my treatment. Suddenly, I felt like a human being. When doctors become involved in their patients' lives, they can cure in ways they may not expect. One doctor told about a woman and her child who had come to see him. He wrote some prescriptions for antibiotics and then asked, "What's going on in your life?" He learned that the woman's husband had left her, and after listening for a while, he realized that what she needed was to speak to legal aid. They spoke for a time, and so he gave her the telephone number, and she forgot to pick up the prescriptions. When she came back a week later, she was beaming and healthy, as was her child. The visit to legal aid had solved her problem. The antibiotics turned out to be unnecessary. Someone cared and responded, and she felt hope, and she could go on. What had been impossible for these patients to experience became possible when someone cared and loved enough to get involved. John 3:16 may be the ultimate expression of how Dr. God became involved with patient humanity. The most impossible obstacles that stunt our lives are not technological challenges or physical disabilities or the realities of time and space. The most debilitating impossibilities we face are those that are rooted in wrong relationships, eroded emotions, hurtful habits, and bad behaviors. Every one of us faces in life some looming impossibilities. So, can you believe in the limitless possibility of God's love and grace when it comes to habits, hurts, and your heart? Can you believe in the limitless possibility of God's hand in your future? And can we believe in the limitless possibility of God's plan for the church, for our church? Just before his death, U.S. Senate Chaplain Richard Halverson shared these thoughts about the church. In the beginning, the church was a fellowship of men and women, people who centered their lives on the living Christ. They had a personal relationship with the Lord, and it transformed them and the world around them. Then the church moved to Greece, where it became a philosophy. Later, it moved to Rome, where it became an institution. Next, it moved to Europe, where it became a culture. And finally, it moved to the United States, where it became an enterprise. We've got far too many churches and so few fellowships. Can we believe that it is possible to go back and follow the way, and that God is already making a way for our sustainability and our future in the church? Maybe you're not yet convinced. Maybe the impossibilities are looming so big that you cannot imagine a way through. But my beloved, with God, all things are possible, for God so loved the world. Some would say that one of the best ways to get to yes is to act as if, and to practice, practice, practice. So let's practice claiming that kind of faith, that kind of possibility. I'm going to offer a litany of impossible confessions, and when I indicate, I want you to respond with, "For God so loved the world." So let's begin in faith. For God so loved the world. I don't think I can face another day of working my impossible job. For God so loved the world. It's impossible for me to manage staying in my house by myself any longer. For God so loved the world. I can't seem to get control of my impossible drinking, eating, gambling, shopping, media addiction. For God so loved the world. I have impossible monthly bills that now outweigh my monthly income. For God so loved the world. I'm facing an impossible situation with my kids. For God so loved the world. There's a problem in my life that I'm finding it impossible to face. For God so loved the world. There's a relationship in my life that's so broken, it's impossible to face. For God so loved the world. It does not seem like there's a sustainable way forward for my little church. Is it impossible for us to keep this experiment open? For God so loved the world. Beloved, God so loved the world that the impossible is possible. May it be for all of us today, for God so loved the world, and you, and you, and you, and me. Amen.